Hi, Successfuls. Kelly here. Who wants to be a millionaire? Well, whether that's a goal of yours or not, in this episode, we're talking about Plan Your Year Like a Millionaire by Rachel Rodgers. This is the Success Through Community podcast.
Hi, Kelly.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Doing good. Can't complain. So what?
I can,
Well,
but I'm not going
that's
to.
fair. I can complain. I won't complain. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I'm excited today to talk about a book, and yet I'm not excited to talk about a book. It's so weird, but let's just go with it. So I chose a book to read, and it was an Audible original, so I didn't actually read it. I listened to it, and it's not one that I would normally pick up. It's not a book that I would genuinely be interested in reading, but I did. It's called Plan Your Year Like a Millionaire by Rachel Rodgers. And I have some really mixed feelings about this one because I really like her thoughts and ideas, but I really dislike the vibe that I got from her.
Really?
It's so weird. I felt like she had like a lack of respect for white men and women who were not mothers.
Oh,
And
well, you know how I
because
feel
I don't
about
know,
that.
yeah. So the book seems to be written for a very specific audience, and I do not fit into that audience profile.
Okay.
It doesn't mean it was a bad book. It just I didn't like the vibe of it. But she had a lot of great tips and stuff in it.
Okay.
So what I want to do is I definitely want to talk about what I disliked about the book before I get into what I did like, because I did like more than I didn't, but I want to be very clear about what I didn't like about this book.
Before you do that,
The
I'm
title and the
curious about one thing.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
you said at the beginning of this that this is not the type of book you normally would have read. And it
Mhm.
sounds like, I mean, obviously you haven't gotten into the details yet, but it sounds like your instincts were spot on. So I'm
Mhm.
curious, what was it about it from the very beginning that made you feel that way about it? And what made you decide to listen to it anyway?
Yeah. Okay. So what was it about it right from the get-go was the title.
Okay.
Plan Your Year Like a Millionaire. I mean, it's catchy, but it's not exactly my goal to become a
Yeah.
millionaire.
Okay.
It wasn't my intention to live like a millionaire. You know what I mean? So that for me was one of those, do I really want to read this book? Because she's not talking to me, because it's obviously not what I want. But I just, again, right out of the gate, I knew I wasn't the target audience, but I did pick up the book because it's planning your year. It is an organization and planning book. So I was looking for some solid planning techniques, because you can't tell me that millionaires do not have a plan and that they do not have, techniques that they could share and be great advice for someone like me.
True. True. Okay.
So
Fair enough.
there was some great advice. There were some ideas and concepts, though, that didn't sit well with me. I mean, for example, she talks about, so maybe you have the aspiration to one day hire somebody, you want an assistant. A lot of small businesses do that. As solopreneurs, we want to outsource sometimes, right? And she encourages you to stop dreaming about it and stop aspiring for it, but just to do it. Go out and hire one, even if you don't have the money to do so.
Oh, you know
Because,
how that I already
yeah,
don't like
yeah.
that.
And her idea behind having an assistant is so that you can free up the time to do the things that are going to make money. And I mean, yeah, in theory, it's a good idea, but it's so risky for my taste, and I personally don't recommend it. So, that's one of the things that didn't sell. Another thing, this one got me. So she challenges her readers to bring home in 10 days. And she does this with her coaching too. She encourages, go earn 10K in 10 days. And I think it's a great challenge, and I encourage it. I really like the idea that she pushes you to do that. And I found her perspective on it being very empowering, because she encourages you to come up with 25 ways you can earn $10,000 in the next 10 days
Yeah.
and actually start acting on them. And the point or purpose is to prove to yourself that you are capable of earning this kind of money. Like, okay, I get that. I like that empowerment. Not everybody is in a kind of business that's possible, but the point to this is to really get you out and do it. And she kind of says, but you can do it. You can raise your rates. You can call former clients and convince them to rehire you and then have them pay up front. You can plan a sellout retreat,
Ugh.
hold a $500 an hour Ask Me Anything session. And I'm like, okay, these are all great ideas depending on what kind of business you have. But in the same breath, she suggests you ask your boss for a raise. You go sell furniture. Call that cousin that still owes you money. Start another side hustle. Rent out your car. Open a room for your house for Airbnb. And I'm like shaking my head, going, how do you go from one extreme to the other so darn quickly?
I mean, that the my only reaction to that is gross.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
for so
there's.
many reasons, and,
Mhm.
like, even as you were explaining the challenge, even before you got to the total ick factor part of it, because I was tracking with you at first, I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, maybe 10K isn't reasonable for, to your point, every business, but, like, you can find your own target number or whatever. It's
Yeah.
it's a good
Absolutely.
concept,
Yeah.
but, like, what I was hearing, and even before you got to the gross things, and when you were just talking about, like, the strategies, the business strategies, what I was hearing is, this is something I could do as, like, an end of year push, but this is not
Yeah.
something that you can do repetitively.
No.
Because
And
how many times, because I feel like the point of what she's trying to get at is like, "See, you can have 10K months." It's like, "Yeah,
yeah,
but you're hustling in a way that you can't possibly hustle every month." Like,
it's not
it
sustainable.
no, that's totally not
Mhm.
scalable, and it's not repeatable, and, oh, I don't
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, so I really like the idea because it is empowering. Let's say you do $500 by the end of the week. I'm going to set that as a goal and I'm going to do it. And then you write down 25 ways to come up with $500. Do a blast to your email going, "Hey, I'll give everybody access for 6 months for $99." You know what I mean? Like you only have to sell 5.
Yeah, it
It's
just feels
one of
so
those things,
gimmicky. It's so
right?
gimmicky, though. That's
Yeah,
like,
so
it
these
ugh, gosh, I have so many thoughts, but sorry,
yeah.
this is your book, keep
Yeah.
going.
No, it's all good. So when I was telling you that I've done it in the past, I've done it in the past when I shot film for photography. It was one of those, I need to get some money to, it's Christmas is coming. I want to do something extravagant. How can I push to get an extra $1,000, $10,000, whatever I wanted for Christmas? It's easy back then because negatives, or what they're now called digital full resolution files, were never part of a wedding package or a portrait package. So out of the 300 weddings that were sitting on my lap, I could call and go, "Hey, do you want your wedding negatives? They were $2,000 when you got married, but I'll give them to you for 500." And people would just jump, right? Because
Well, yeah,
they're
it's a
their
great
wedding
deal.
negatives. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm going, "Hey, I've done this." And I'm not being skeevy. I'm giving them what they want. They wanted it, couldn't afford it. Well, that's just what it was at the time. But now it's like, "Hey, if you want them, great, they're yours." But then what ended up happening is the following year, if they never bought them when I was offering them on the cheap, I would just be like, "What's your address? I'm going to mail these to you," because I didn't have the heart to throw them away. So
Right,
and I don't
right.
want to store them. But I think to her point, which I value, or not value, but I appreciate, is that she's trying to prove the point that no matter who you are or what you're doing, if you set yourself up to do something, you are capable. And when you set yourself that 10K in 10 days and you pull it off, it should be reassuring to you that you are fully capable of doing what you want. So there's no excuse holding you back.
Yeah, I just feel like
And
that could backfire so quickly, though,
so
because
quickly.
yeah, you may prove to yourself that you can do that, but it's like, I mean, I immediately think back to, I'm gonna say old school at this point, but the challenge launch strategy,
Yep,
where
yep.
you, like, kill yourself running a challenge, and, like, well, first planning an entire challenge, planning a specific funnel for that challenge, and then running the challenge and trying to keep the energy up for whatever the length of that challenge is, and then,
Mhm.
seeing it through the launch and all of that, and you're, like, exhausted at the end of that.
Yeah.
So, you may bring in your goal when you do that, and that's fantastic. It's great to know that you can do that, but that would make me feel like, "Oh my gosh, is this what my business is gonna always
It,
be like? Because I
it'd be
can't do that."
exhausting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be exhausting. I mean, I understand, and we've all done it before where we have done the challenge and we have done what we needed to do and pushed through. And at the end of it, review and reflect and go, was there really enough of an ROI on this?
And the answer
So,
is no most of the
no,
time.
exactly, exactly. One of the last things that I was not a fan of the book is the author's story. Her personal journey just didn't sit right with me. And it's not that it's
Huh.
fake or anything like that. It's just she expresses that she comes from like a lower middle class and she was drowning in student loans and life was so hard as a black female with babies and all of that stuff. From that struggle to being this multimillionaire who is super successful. Now, don't get me wrong, this is incredibly inspiring and I am so happy for her, proud of her. I mean, she brags about how she doesn't brag. She talks in the book about how one day she went, you know what? I'm buying first class for my family on this vacation. I can and I'm gonna. And she talks like she's never done it again. But she was able to do it stress free. And I thought, that would be a nice little luxury to have. So good for you. But I get the vibe from the book that she believes anybody who doesn't fit her description of struggle doesn't have to work for their success, that they don't have
Oh.
to work hard for their money, and I found her very dismissive of anybody who isn't a single mother and of a minority group.
Yeah.
Like she
Which
are white men.
but I mean, like, just being female is a minority group if you're really gonna look at it from that
If you
perspective.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, and
but
then she
oh
she
gosh.
just kept on adding on the layers, yeah,
Yeah.
and it was
More gross, more ick factor for me right here.
yeah, so it's unfortunate. It really is unfortunate. I think it could have been written better, but I think it just shows her personality and it's just authentically who she is.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
you know what?
fine.
She will be for a large
A
group of
lot of
people. You know
people.
what I mean?
And
Like,
I'm just
and
not
that's
one.
great that she's being authentically her and she'll find her
Yeah.
people and they'll find her and that'll be great for them. So,
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, we've mentioned it before and I knew right out of the gate when I looked at the title, she's adorable. Like she's gorgeous. Like I love her look. But the title of the book didn't sit well and I knew right out of the gate this is probably not for me. But again, I wanted to give it an honest go and I did. And there was some things that I did like about the book. So like I said, there's more I really liked about it than I disliked. It's just the things that I disliked were really heavy. They really it was laid on thick for me.
well,
So
and they're permeating. I mean, it's like the entire tone of the book.
mhm.
So,
Yeah.
it's kind of like going back to the next 5 moves for me, right? It's like
Mhm.
it's not that the things that Patrick was saying were bad. I mean, I agreed with 90% of what he said. I just
Yeah.
there was just something about the vibe that just didn't jive for me, which is sidebar kind of interesting because since cuz I didn't really know who he was before I read the book.
Mhm.
And since I read the book and we did that episode, he is like all over Think Media's YouTube and like was part of their video conference and like all this stuff. And I'm just like, that is so interesting that
There's
like,
an actual term for that. I can't remember what it is, but it's like the second you buy a Volkswagen Beetle, they're all of a sudden everywhere.
yeah,
Your brain is noticing it more because your brain is more aware of it.
that is an amazing segue to the next episode we're going to record. You don't
Yeah?
even know how amazing that segue is. So
You're welcome.
putting a pin in that, and anyone who's listening, make sure you listen to next week's episode to find out what I'm talking about, because literally, you could not have teed that up better if you
Oh, I
tried.
love it.
So
Okay.
thank you for that.
I will bring that up again. You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome. Okay, so back to planning your year like a millionaire, or plan your year like a millionaire. Sorry. Some of her tips are, for the most part, pretty good. The bits and pieces I didn't like set aside, I did find the book to be less bookish and more motivational podcasty, like just an extra long podcast
Mm.
episode. And I really did like listening to her narrate it. So, and when I looked her up on Instagram, she seems fun and bubbly and light and all of these things. But again, this is all what we are supposed to see, right? I found that
True.
the actual planning portion in a book titled Plan Your Year was a bit light,
Hmm.
but the motivational aspect makes up for it. I think some of the main takeaways can help anybody, whether you plan to be a millionaire or you are a millionaire. Some of the things that she talks about are things that can help anybody have a more sustainable business and a more happier life, I guess. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about a few of those. So one of them is to, now I'm not a big where you're going to be in 10 years kind of person, but she does talk about kind of visualize yourself in 10 years and why you want more money. And we mentioned this before. So knowing your why makes you more resilient. When you have that clear reasoning for wanting money, it makes it easier to stay motivated and push through it. We discussed it in the soul source episode, right? If you have no shame in the fact that you are in business to get a private jet, then your decisions are going to be easier to make to move forward to earn that private jet, right? So aim for that sucker. Know your why and have that clear reason. Now, again, this book is aimed to people who want to be a millionaire. So she focuses on the fact that you need a clear reason why you want money. You want to fly your kids first class. You want a private jet. You want these things. And I think for someone like me who doesn't have those types of goals or aspirations, it's more knowing the clarity for me is going to help support the idea. And there is no shame. And I do want the finer things in life. We're renovating our kitchen and it's going to take us 3 to 5 years to pay it off. If I had enough money to pay it off next month, would I be happy or complain? Not in the slightest.
Right.
So yeah, there is money motivating me, of course. And it's the fact that she's like, there's no shame in it. Own it. It's okay. But like we talked with Soul Source, just don't let that be your main driver. Don't let that be your only motivation,
Yeah, it shouldn't be your why.
right? It shouldn't be your why. So I'll give it that. She talks about what she called, what was it? Mind trash. She talks about cleaning up the mind trash. When she refers to mind trash, she's referring to the negative and repetitive thoughts that kind of clutter us up and hold us back from actually reaching our full potential. So she definitely talks about releasing those doubts and fears and releasing the critical self-talk that sabotage us, and it gets us into that cycle of unproductivity. And she talks about how to combat it, right? Like how it's not easy just to stop the negative self-talk. Nobody can just turn it off, but she talks about changing and shifting your thought patterns, which we've discussed before. She calls it winning language. I just call it changing your thought patterns, but everybody has a term for everything, right?
Right.
So reframing your language into something more positive. So instead of thinking, I can't do this, reframe it to, this is challenging, but I can find a way to make it work. It's just that kind of shift, which I agree with. I mean, for me personally, it has made a huge difference in my life to go from I can't to okay, maybe I can figure this out. I will figure this out. It's a huge mind shift. And I think whether you want to be a millionaire or not, that mind shift is going to help you move forward and make decisions, right?
So yes, yes, and I agree with that. But this sounds so far this is sounding very mindset heavy, which I'm not saying isn't important, but the title of this book sounds like a how-to guide. So is it like a bait
Not
and
so
switch
much.
when you get into it? Like it's really
Oh,
not?
I wouldn't say it's a bait and switch because she does give you actionable tasks. Go write down 25 ways you can earn
But
$10,000.
does she like
Now, go
help
write
you do
down,
that besides like sell
no.
your kidneys? Because like that that to me is not helpful. You know what I'm saying? Like
You could only sell one kidney for the record.
okay, but you know what I'm
Okay,
saying.
listeners, don't take all of Kelly's
Or
advice.
maybe don't
No, I
sell
know
any of
exactly
your
what you're saying.
kidneys, okay? But my point is just like that to like saying
Yeah,
like, "Hey, go do this." If you don't tell me
yeah.
how to go do this, like I that's not helpful advice to me.
No, I agree. So that's why I say that this book, because again, it's an Audible original, so it's only available on Audible, and so it's only an audiobook. That's why I say it feels more like this big motivational podcast than an actual tell me how to plan my year.
Okay, but I also don't think, by
because
the way, I don't think that Audible Original means that it's only an audiobook, just FYI.
really?
I think that it means it's
I'll have
only
to look into it.
available as audiobook through Audible. I think no, you can't get it anywhere else for the audiobook, but the book I'm listening to right now for a future episode is an Audible original, but while he is narrating the book, he does little like sidebar narration, and he often
Okay.
refers to if you're listening rather than reading. So there has to be a hard copy version of
Oh,
it.
yeah,
So I think
somewhere.
it's just the exclusivity of the audiobook, just putting that out there. I think that's all that means.
There you go. Perfect. I wouldn't know. I don't dive that deep.
I don't either,
Didn't
but
really
he
listen that
literally
well.
says it. He's, like, saying it over and over again, so it kinda, like, stuck out to me. Anyways.
There has to be a paper version
Yeah,
somewhere. Yeah.
yeah.
What else? What else? Oh, back to Rachel. And one of the things that she talks about is that I agree with is your environment and how your environment affects your performance. So as a small business owner, set up a space. She calls it a millionaire space, like a millionaire's office, decluttering and organizing, create that sense of order and calm, just creating your good space for you to work at. And we all know that that's true. I mean, it's so hard to work at your dining table when your toddler is eating, your husband is cooking, and the neighbor is mowing their lawn or having a barbecue, and there's all that stuff going on. So, in my opinion, it's about boundaries. So if you can create a space where you can sit and focus, even if you have to have your kids with you, even if you have to have your dog drooling on your knee, which mine does all the time, then yeah, but as long as it's your space, right? And it's your workspace, it's your environment to help you focus on your business, to help you boost your mood and set the stage for success. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah,
And
agree.
she does talk about that a lot. She doesn't mention that, you know what, sometimes the kitchen table is the only place some of us can work where we are starting our business. She encourages going out and getting us workspace, which I disagree with, but it's one of those things again where it's perception, knowing your own self and knowing your limits and being
Yeah.
responsible, I guess.
Yeah, this is where
So,
you and I are very similar in that, like, we understand that it takes money to make money, like, it's such a trite thing
yeah,
to say, but it's true, we get that, but it doesn't mean that you can't make money without spending money, and, like, you need
and
to
it
do it
doesn't mean go
responsibly.
in
Yeah,
debt.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
save
So
up
those
for it
coaches
or
out there,
whatever.
yeah, use your credit card, get another credit card, get a line of credit. No,
Yeah, the
no, because
people
you're just going to hurt yourself in the long run.
well, and the
And you
people
know
who
what?
talk
It's worked
about
for some people.
yeah, it has worked for some people, and, like, there's
Hmm.
one coach in particular that, anybody who's listening who knows who I'm talking about will know who I'm talking about, but, like,
Hmm.
who literally talks all the time about how she had, like, I don't remember the exact amount of money, but, like, she had, like, $4 or something like that in her bank account, and it was, like, between buying the fridge that her family needed or investing thousands of dollars in a mastermind, and guess which one she picked?
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, and it's like, look, it
And now
obviously
she's
worked
got
out.
four fridges.
Yeah, it worked out for her, but the thing is that, like, there's a difference between sacrifice and irresponsible sacrifice, and
I wouldn't even call it sacrifice if you're going to be
agreed,
irresponsible.
agreed. But I think that's the perspective she comes from with it, and a lot of the other
Yeah.
coaches and mentors who talk about that stuff, that's where they're coming from. And, the thing is that it may have worked out for you, but to counsel someone else to do that, I
Hmm.
just think is so irresponsible as a mentor because you don't know all of
I
the
agree.
details. And are you going to be there for them if it doesn't work out for them and now they're like, you know, severely in debt and losing their house? No, you're not going to be there for them.
A-
That you know what I mean? It's like I
Are you
just
going to refund the money? No, you're
exactly,
not.
exactly. I think it's
Yeah,
super
no,
manipulative
absolutely.
marketing. That's just
Before I started coaching and before I started looking into the industry and seeing what's out there and stuff like that, as a photographer and only a photographer and a business owner, I always had the mentality that I would never, ever ask my clients to do anything that I wouldn't do. That being said, I have lost shoes in swamps because I wanted to get my family in the swamp to take that picture. So I went into the swamp with them. I didn't have to. I could have done it from the side. But how bad does that make you look when you're asking people to do something you won't do? Now, the swamp is a big extreme, but it comes down to finances too.
Right, but
I would
also
never, ever.
but she did do is the thing, like, so I agree
Yeah,
with you that I feel the same way, like, I would never ask them to do something I wasn't willing to do or wouldn't do, but I also wouldn't pressure someone to do something just because I did it, because that's
I agree. I agree 100%. But I also have to question the validity, words are hard. The The, you know what I'm trying to
validity?
say? The truth behind the story. Validity? Yeah.
I mean,
The
yeah,
validity. I mean, having $4, $100, even if it was my last 5, and it had to go towards food and a fridge because our food is spoiling, or a mastermind, I kind of feel like I'd like to call BS on that. I kind of feel like you're exaggerating a bit. You are stretching the truth somewhat. Not saying she didn't take a risk,
yeah,
not saying it wasn't a big risk, but I think that there's a little bit of
exaggeration.
exaggeration.
I
Thank
mean,
you. And I think there's a lot of
and
that out there.
I kind of am on both sides of the fence on if I want that to be true or not, because the thing is, like,
Yeah.
obviously, it's bad if she's lying and, especially with a scare
Hmm.
tactic kind of marketing in that way, that's horrible. But at the same time, like, it's just as bad in my perspective if it is true and she's trying to get other people to do it, because the fact that it worked out
Yeah.
for her is kind of an anomaly. That's not a
Yeah.
guarantee.
And that doesn't mean, listeners, everybody, world out there, that doesn't mean that those who have gone from $4 in their bank account to 4 million in their bank account by taking a risk, that we're not happy. We're not so excited for your success, because that is, you are a unicorn. There's no other way around it. A magical unicorn, because that is not the norm. It's not even the average
Right,
that happens to
right.
people. And it's not the amount of work one does or does not do that gets them from that $4 to $4 million.
See, but that's my
Because
point,
some,
right? And that's exactly my point, is that it's not about how hard you hustle. They will make it seem
mhm,
like, take this risk, but if you're willing to put in the work, then it will come back to you tenfold, blah, blah, blah. No, that it's not a direct correlation. You
yeah,
can work your
no,
butt
not at
off
all.
and still not get there. So I think that's where I have the issue.
Absolutely.
Like, if somebody takes a risk and then they kind of like don't really put in the work and then they don't get the ROI, well, you kind of ask for that. So that's a little bit different.
Well,
But I know people who have worked so hard, done everything they were told to do, and didn't even get close to
mm,
the ROI that they're talking
yeah,
about. And so that's, I think, where it gets
absolutely.
really yucky to me when that happens.
Yeah. That's why the online business world is scary and icky, and
Mhm.
you got to be careful. You got to do your homework.
Yep.
You just gotta. Okay, so the three things about the book, three things that I really did like, is how she kind of broke it down. She broke it into like three key sections. And so I'm going to let you know that they're all about planning. And you know me,
Yes.
I'm a
You are
planner
the
from
planner.
time to time.
Yeah.
So she emphasizes plan your goals. Yes, absolutely. Take time for yourself. So that's a huge thing for me. And she really emphasizes that if you're your best in the morning, then take that time and do your self care in the morning, because it doesn't matter what you do or how, if you don't set that strong foundation. If you're burnt out, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how hard you
Sure.
work. If you're burnt out, you're not going to be able to give it your full. So taking care of you is a priority, and understanding like the power of that mindset, which she really focuses on, which it's hard, but it's something that I think is important to have. It doesn't have to be that Pinterest version of a positive mindset, because sometimes those just don't exist for everybody. And I get that. But it's one of those things where having gratitude is key, and having a mindset of gratitude is important. But so is that desire for growth. So is that desire for more. Because as much as you can be happy and have gratitude for everything, you are not going to grow and stretch if you just plateau with your happiness right here. And so the no shame in wanting more is another thing that I really, really kind of liked, because there's a lot out there where if you're not 100% altruistic and out there just to help others, then you're not going to succeed. Call me when you're ready to just, be that person, because that's just not who most of us are. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Again, it's who's driving the bus, right? She talks about planning your time. This is the book, and I've mentioned this in many podcasts. Sorry, I just yelled at you because I just remembered. This is the book where she talks about Shonda Rhimes.
Oh, yeah, you have mentioned this a number of times.
I have. If you listeners, lovely, lovely listeners, if you haven't heard on previous podcasts, I've mentioned it before that I've listened to a book where she mentions Shonda Rhimes and how Shonda sets strong boundaries with her team. And if you don't know who Shonda Rhimes is, you need to message me and we need to have a heart to heart. But Shonda is a showrunner for a lot of really great shows. She did Scandal, Grey's Anatomy, Bridgerton, which I've never seen an
Wait,
episode of, so
I
don't judge
forgot
me.
that she did Bridgerton.
We're not, yeah, she's behind a lot of really good things. But Shonda has boundaries. And when she goes into her office and decides she's going to write, that's it. The door is closed. And she tells her team, do not come to me with problems. Only come to me with solutions. So if there's a problem, you solve it, then you come to me. But at that point, if you've solved the problem, there's no point in interrupting me. So just leave me alone. Go away. And I love that. She also talks about Venus Williams. Venus Williams? Is that the right person? I'm not a
Well,
sports
there's
person. The tennis
Serena
player?
and their sisters, so she could mean either one.
Okay. It could have been one of them. Well, it was one of them. I think it was Serena. Simply because apparently this tennis player had a big, bad, audacious goal of winning 18 championships. And she was busting her butt to win 18 championships. And somebody went up to Serena, and I think it was her coach or something, and was like, why only 18? Like, that doesn't seem like enough. To me, I'm going, dude, if I could win one, I'd be okay. But then Serena kind of had a mind shift and went, you're right. I want to win 30. So now, with that bigger, more scary goal, she worked that much harder. And she, of course, accomplished all those goals. So she's now training for someone to win 30 championships, not someone to win 18 championships. I mean, semantics, but it's more the concept of the bigger the goal, the harder you'll work, which I don't 100% necessarily agree with. But what I do agree with is planning those goals. Plan to win, shift your attitude towards winning, write it down, figure out what the costs are, what you need to do, and how to do it, and the steps you need to take. So I kind of appreciate that portion of the book as well. She goes on planning your time, but it's not a big thing, right? Because for some reason, in a book called Plan Your Year, there's not a lot of how to plan your year.
Yeah.
It's just more, yeah. She talks more, again, this is that motivational thing. She talks more about don't make excuses. If you say you're going to do it, and be honest about where you're spending your time. If you say you're sitting at your desk writing, but you're actually scrolling through Facebook for 50 of the 60 minutes, be honest with yourself
I
for a
do agree
time.
with that because I
Yeah,
think a
I
lot of
agree.
us think we
Yeah.
spend more time working on our business than we actually do.
Yes, I agree. We feel like we're doing so much, but really, doom scrolling through Facebook is
Yeah.
engaging on Facebook, but it is not supporting your
It's
business by
not
any means. Like,
productive
yeah, I
time. Yeah.
100% agree. And that's one of the things I liked about the book and what I liked about her opinion and about, again, she showed to me what I think are true colors when she talks about this point. She talks about how cooking dinner for her kids isn't one of those things that she wants to do, so she makes somebody else do it. Well, it doesn't make, she hires somebody else to do it, because peeling carrots versus actually hanging out with my kids while someone else is peeling carrots, and it's just so not relatable. Right? So I get it. If I could have a personal chef, you bet I would. Oh, wait, I have a husband. I'm good. Thank you. I'm not a big cook, so I understand her dislike for that and that example. But what I don't relate to is that I'll just hire someone to do it for me, because I'm not at that point. And I don't think I ever want to be at that point. For me, hiring someone to cook is going to be HelloFresh or Chef's Plate. That is the extent of my, but who knows? Maybe I'll become a gazillionaire and I will have a personal chef. Yeah, we'll see. It's not part of
You're
my
not ruling it out.
ambitions.
You don't have to rule it out right
Not
now. Yeah.
ruling it out. I mean, I'm not gonna turn it away, but it's not gonna be on my list of priorities.
There you
that's
go.
for sure.
It's not in your writer. It's just
Right?
yeah.
Yeah. It's just if it happens, like if Brad Pitt showed up my door and was like, "Hey, you want to go for drinks?" I'm like, "Hey,
Okay.
sorry, honey,
We've
I'm
gone
here."
down
But
a weird path now.
no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But see, that's the kind of thing that I really liked about the book. But then she goes and says something silly like the carrot thing, and I'm going, why? Um, what else? Oh, and another thing she talked about, which I think is great, is planning your support. She talks about maintaining great relationships and higher caliber relationships, which I get. You want to hang out with people who are like minded and have the same kind of dreams and goals, or have already accomplished the same kind of dreams and goals. I get that. But then she went and talked about things that I didn't like, so we just won't go there. But grabbing that first little bit of making sure you have a support team and a support network, not necessarily someone to do the work for you, but someone, Kelly, you are part of my support network, right? Like you are there for me when I start feeling that it's not worth it. I'm tired and I'm drained, and I go to my support network.
Well, and that part of
and you
it
pick me
we
back up and help
obviously
me
agree
out,
with.
right?
I mean, what is the name of this podcast?
Yeah,
Obviously, we
exactly.
fully are on board
So
with that concept.
100%. So that is one of the big things that I took away from the book too, is like, yes, plan your support. So for me, this book had some great concepts. I think there was a lot of valuable advice. And whether you are becoming, you have that aim or goal to be a millionaire, or just simply looking for a happier, more productive life, there are little bits of wisdom that can be applied. I think that if you can look past some of this negative stuff, then it's kind of worth listening to, because it's not a long book by any means. And she's very engaging and she seems very pleasant. I really enjoyed listening to her. It was just, hit and miss with some of the things. And maybe you are her audience. And if you are aiming to be a millionaire, and if you are aiming to not like white men and people who don't have children, this book is for you. But
The
yeah, that's kind
endorsement
of
that
my take
was.
on this one. I'm so
No,
sorry, Miss Rachel
look, you
Rodgers,
know
but
what?
that's
It's
just,
everyone
yeah,
is not for everyone. Like that's just reality. And
yeah,
even with
yeah,
that, I think you brought up a lot of good points that she made, I mean, nothing that I
yeah.
heard that was like mind blowing, like, oh, I haven't heard that somewhere else before.
Nothing's new.
But
Yeah,
at the same
absolutely.
time, not bad things to remind ourselves of. I mean, it's yeah, it's not one that's going to go on my list. So that's kind of part of the purpose
Yeah,
of this podcast, from my perspective, is to like wean down that list. Which we
yeah,
don't do very well because we tend to really like most of the books, and so just make
yeah. I've noticed that we
yeah,
have a
we do.
problem.
It tends to make my list longer. But this time I think it might have actually removed something. So thanks for
Yeah,
that.
and you're welcome. I have no regrets listening to this book. I have no regrets investing my time in it, because I really like a lot of the reminders that she gives. Will I come back to it for tips or tricks or advice at a later date? Absolutely not. It was not written for me. And I know that right out of the gate. And honestly, I'm going to let you know moving forward that if I read a title, because I've told you 100 times, I judge a book by its cover. I'm that person, literally. I don't do that to people, but I do it to books. And this one, I should have just went with my gut on it. But I think we had a great conversation based on it. So I have zero regrets. And yeah, that's how I feel about it.
If you guys want to connect with us on social media, Jolene, do you want to tell them how they can do that?
Sure. You can follow us on Instagram at Success Through Community, or join our free or paid communities over at Patreon, which is patreon.com/STC Productions.
The best way that you can support the podcast is to make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening. and leave us a review. That's the only way that new people will find and join our community. The Success Through Community podcast is hosted by Kelly Gable and Jolene Mills, and all episodes are solely the opinions of the respective host. Our sound production and editing is done by Kelly Gable, and all visual creative, including our logo, was created by Jolene Mills. The Success Through Community podcast is an STC production.